We didn't have really any big shakeups in the top 25 in week 13. At least I don't think we're going to see any big changes. But I do think there will be some teams moving up and down a little bit. I think some teams towards the back end are going to drop out. We're going to have some new teams this week. So let's get into my projections, which I think I've done a pretty good job of these projections. Obviously, the first ones were not good. But once I saw kind of what this committee was doing, and again, because it's different this year, I think we've done a pretty good job, and I'd stack my projections up with really any of the other projections out there. So let's get into it, and we'll start at the bottom. And this is how I think this is going to go. All right, so I think Arizona State will move up to 21. SMU, I think, will make it their debut into these rankings. They've got a pretty good resume, really, when you look at it. I know you see the 3 losses, and they've lost to some, I would say bad teams, but they do have a loss to Baylor, TCU, and Wake Forest. Those are, average teams, but they have the win over Miami, and that's a big win, and then the win over Louisville, which doesn't look as good. But I mean, part of the reason of why that is because SMU beat Louisville, so that knocked them down even more. I think the SMU is going to be there. I think Pittsburgh is going to be there after the win over Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech doesn't quite fall all the way out. I think with 2 losses, a Power 4 team at this point with 2 losses, it's hard to take them out of the top 25. So I think Georgia Tech is still there. And then I'm going with North Texas. I mean, they've only got 1 loss. James Madison only has 1 loss. I think North Texas has the better wins. So yeah, this is kind of a tough one for me as far as who gets that final spot. I think it's going to be North Texas. There are some more 3-loss teams like Arizona and some others that could possibly sneak in here. But this is how I think it's going to look. And I will say, I have not done a great job of figuring out what they're going to do with a group of 5 teams. That's been probably the biggest challenge for me in projecting these rankings. But again, North Texas just 1 loss in the American Conference, a good conference. I think North Texas gets there. I think they get to number 25. And they're still alive to win the American. I think we've got it right now a 3-way tie, so that's going to be interesting to see what happens there. All right, let's move on to the next 5 teams. 16 through 20, we got Tulane at number 20. I think they move up. Tennessee moves up after really an impressive win against Florida. They blew them out. Virginia continues to move up a little bit. Then you got Michigan and USC. So I don't think USC is going to drop a whole lot. They played Oregon on the road. Pretty competitive game. And this committee has shown us that performance matters. How are they going to view that game? It didn't come down to the wire, but it was a competitive game. I think they view that as a good game. And USC still has that win over Michigan. It's hard for me to justify Michigan over USC based on that head-to-head matchup when Michigan doesn't really have a great resume either. So I think USC really doesn't drop. I think they were 15 last week, maybe only 1 spot. I don't think they really move much again after that performance against Oregon. We'll see. Again, that's one of the questions. Where does USC drop? How far do they fall? I think that actually Texas will still be the top ranked 3-loss team though at number 15. I've got them there at 8-3. And then we've got Utah at 14, Vanderbilt at 13, Miami at 12, BYU at number 11. And it's pretty clear here Texas will be the highest ranked 3-loss team just based off of what they've done before. So the shakeup here, I think that Miami and Vanderbilt are going to jump ahead of Utah. I think those were very close before. They seem to want to continue to creep Miami up, which is interesting. And again, what are they going to do if they get really close to Notre Dame? Are they going to jump them ahead of Notre Dame? They have an opportunity to knock off a top 25, potentially top 25 Pittsburgh team this week. I just think it's more about Utah and their close win, a struggle game for them, and Vanderbilt and Miami looking impressive. This committee has shown us that performance matters, and they've shown us that they have a recency bias. And again, if you look at those games from this past weekend, Miami and Vanderbilt look better than Utah. So I think they're going to jump them up. Maybe they don't. Maybe they only do Miami. They don't do Vanderbilt. They've done some strange things like that so far with these rankings. But that's how I see it playing out. BYU, the nice win on the road. Is that enough to jump ahead of, say, an Alabama? I don't think so, even though they've only got 1 loss. They're going to get their opportunity against Texas Tech. And I think it's probably going to be winning you're in, losing you're not. Maybe there's a way, even if, let's say Alabama loses to Auburn, and that opens a spot for BYU to get into the ranking, into the playoff. Then you got Miami, though, sitting there, too. Does Miami jump ahead of BYU if they beat Pitt and then BYU winds up losing to Texas Tech? I don't think Miami's out of this thing. I don't think Vanderbilt's out of it. I think Utah's probably done unless we just get complete chaos. But yeah, Miami and Vanderbilt, I talked about that in the takeaways video. Those are the winners this past week. I think they've got an opportunity to sneak in there if some teams fall. And again, with BYU, so let's talk about BYU. If they lose to Texas Tech for a second straight time, and that game's really not all that close. If their second loss came in the Big 12 championship, is that going to be enough for them to drop below Miami and even potentially Vanderbilt? That is going to be really, really interesting. Now, BYU could wind up winning that game, and then we talk about Texas Tech versus Miami and Vanderbilt. I think Texas Tech would be in. But those are going to be very interesting scenarios that could possibly play out. Now, it may not matter. Miami might lose to Pitt. Vanderbilt might lose to Tennessee. But we'll see how that plays out again this weekend. I'm telling you, this is going to be a very fun Week 14. I feel like in the past few years, Week 14 has been really not a lot of competitive games, not a lot of games with playoff implications. You had playoff implications, but you kind of knew who were going to win most of the games. This year, man, it feels like we got a lot of games that could go either way, so it's going to be fun. The top 10, I don't really see any changes here. Ole Miss at 6, Oregon at 7, Oklahoma at number 8, Notre Dame at number 9, and Alabama at number 10. Again, just really no reason to move anyone. Oklahoma did beat Missouri, but Oregon just beat USC. If anything, I think Oregon maybe jumps ahead of Ole Miss. When you compare their resumes, I think you can make a case for Oregon being ahead of Ole Miss for sure. That's the one area I look at as possibly being a change here, but I don't think that win over USC is going to be quite enough. When you look at the resumes for these two teams, Oregon now has the win over USC. They also have a win over Iowa. Oklahoma has that top 10 win over Ole Miss, I should say, has that top 10 win over Oklahoma. They also got a top 25 win over Tulane. They've also got a win over LSU. So I think Ole Miss's resume still is better. They also lost to Georgia. So, the losses are pretty comparable. Georgia and Indiana, both top 5 teams. So I think Ole Miss has the edge just because they have that one really good win. But it's pretty close, and I think you can make an argument for Oregon. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be Ole Miss. All right, now we go to the top 5. No change here. Texas Tech at number 5, Georgia at number 4, Texas A&M at 3, Indiana at 2, and Ohio State at number 1. Could a top 10 team lose this week? Texas Tech has to play at West Virginia. West Virginia has already they pulled off some upsets this year. Georgia has a Georgia Tech. Seems like those teams are going in different directions. Probably not going to happen. Indiana, Purdue, probably not going to happen. But Texas A&M's got that game against Texas. That is going to be, I haven't even looked to see who's favored. Texas might actually be favored in that game. That's going to be a really good game. And then obviously Ohio State, Michigan, we know what could happen there. So we could see a top 5 team lose this week, and we could see a pretty big shakeup. Or maybe that doesn't happen. Who knows what's going to happen. I think we're going to see upsets. I'm not saying we're going to see a top 5 upset, but I think we will see some upsets. And I would say we're going to see probably at least one top 10 upset. Maybe not top 5, but top 10. And I think, again, if you think you got it figured out, I think there's going to be some twists and turns still as we play out these final, really 2 weeks, because you got Week 14 and then the conference championship games. But that's how I'm projecting the rankings this week. How do you think they're going to look? Let me know down in the comments below.